Hello chess fans! Today I'm going to show you a game from the second tournament I ever played, and it's an illustrative example of a lot of things, more specifically practical chess play and a rook endgame, but also I'm going to deep dive into the opening that was actually played because I think it's a very common opening at the club level. So I start off with d4, and it's important to note at this time I was a London player because I didn't really know any theory, and I just searched up YouTube videos at the time. This was around in 2017 or 2018, maybe 2019. But basically, I didn't know any openings, and I recently just switched from e4 to the London because people told me the London was easy to learn. Now, I don't recommend this, but if you want to try out the London, it's definitely a fine way to play. I just would enjoy playing against it as black, so thank you very much, London players. So my opponent played d6, and even though I had learned the London system, I was strong enough a player to realize that, okay, the bishop on f4 just doesn't really make sense if the pawn's blunting it on d6, and this is actually correct. Bishop f4 here can be considered like a pretty bad move because he can go knight bd7 and e5, and this would not make much sense, or g6, bishop g7 and e5. So here I played e4, I switched plans. So my opponent went knight f6, I went knight c3, c6, and here I just thought, okay, the most natural move, just take all the center. And here I was already out of book after d6 e4, but here I was even more out of book because I just never seen this before. And notice I hadn't even played a lot of games at this point. Most of my games were in e4, e5. I've played that many times at the club level, and at this point I was just starting to play online, so I didn't really have any experience with this. So my opponent here played queen a5, and this is called the Czech Pirc, or it's sometimes called the Czech defense, and it's a very tricky line, and I ended up playing bishop d2 in the game, but before I go actually into the game, I just wanted to go over what you should actually respond to this if you get it in your own games. So what I'm going to recommend is their idea is they're pinning here and attacking the pawn. So the most natural move is either to unpin, to move the pawn, or to defend the pawn. So I think the best move is by far to defend the pawn. The idea is I'm defending that pawn, I'm also developing, I'm preparing the castle. And here, the only move they really have that makes any sense is to go for this move e5. If they go for a move like knight bd7, you can immediately go e5 yourself, and your position should just be winning. Okay, but after e5, you're going to play this move knight f3. You're defending your pawn here. And here they have a few main moves. Now, the point of my recommendations here is to give you as little to know as possible so that even when you possibly forget this, you only need to know one or two things. So here there's three lines, and that's all you really basically need to know. So the first line goes with e takes d4, and I assume you will not really see this at all because, for example, after knight takes d4, here you just have a nice position. What you're going to go for is you're going to go for castles. You're going to see the setup like now. You're going to castle, go king h1. This is the idea, is to go bishop e3, bishop g1. Because notice if I go bishop e3 right away, there's this move knight g4, and I'm in huge trouble because the bishop's attack, and if it moves back, I lose my knight. So for example, if I go bishop e3 here, there's this move knight g4, and there's just no way to defend here. Okay, so I have to go king h1 so that I can go bishop e3 and then bishop g1. And after castles, here you can go for bishop e3. That's a perfectly fine move, but you can also go for this move f5. And this is sort of the main idea. We're going to bring our bishop along this diagonal. The queen's going to go to e1, h4. This is the idea. And the knight's going to try to maneuver here. This knight comes this way, and all the pieces are simply attacking. So that's against e takes d4. So let's go back. E takes d4 is not a very good move. It doesn't really make sense. Your whole idea was to preserve this on d5. So next, let's look at knight bd7. Again, here we're going to go for the same ideas. Castles, bishop e7, king h1. Castles, and here notice they haven't really gotten rid of the tension here, so what we're going to do is get rid of the tension, take, and now go here. And the idea is the same. Queen e1, queen g3, or queen h4, bishop g5 comes in, knight g5 comes in, rook lifts come in. The attack is just really, really easy here for white, and the position shows that we have a very nice win rate. Okay, you can also play, you shouldn't really play f5 now without this, because now it doesn't really make sense without the g pawn here, and also the center could be opening with d5, weakening the f5 pawn. So don't really play f5 right away. You could also go queen e1. That's also a fine move, but the ideas are similar. Okay, so that's against knight bd7, but the main move is bishop g4. Here the idea is to pin the knight, and they need to trade pieces before they get rid of this. Now here we can't really go for this f5 idea. For example, if takes an f5, it might seem like a fine idea, but now they've gotten rid of their problem piece. Another idea of f5 is that their bishop just has a huge horrible time developing, and it's just a really bad piece, but now they can get rid of it. Then maybe they can go c5, c4, and knight c3, knight d4. They get a lot of counterplay, maybe b4, b5. Without this bishop that's giving them problems with their pieces, their position is fine. So we really shouldn't go for that. Instead, we should go for this move bishop e3, defending our pawn. And here again, they have a few options. Let's see knight bd7. After knight bd7, you're just going to do the same thing. Go h3 to attack the bishop. After they trade, you're going to castle next, go d takes f5, and then just push the pawns up the board. You should be winning this game very handily. Okay, so they probably they probably won't go knight b7. The other move is to go e takes d5, and after here you're going to go bishop takes d5, and we just have a really nice position. All our pieces are developed. Here, for example, if they go for a move like bishop e7, you're just going to castle, and here go h3. Once you get rid of the bishop, now you can go f5 and start pushing pawns on the king side, and you should have a completely winning position. So that's basically a brief overview of how to counter this opening. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, but let's get back into the game now. My opponent played queen a5, and I played bishop d2. So this bishop d2 move is, I think, a very common response to beginners. The bishop is kind of misplaced on d2, but I also just hate pins. This is something that you're going to see throughout this game. I just really dislike pins. My opponent goes for this move queen b6, which is the main move, and maybe a very bad move. Here instead, maybe e5 would make a lot more sense. Now that the bishop is no longer covering d4 after something like knight f3, e takes, if we go knight takes here, queen b6 would immediately be a fork. So, and for example, if our knight goes to b3, what kind of future does our knight have on b3? It makes a lot less sense. So this would probably be the best line, but instead my opponent goes queen b6, which makes a lot of sense. He's attacking two spots here, but thankfully I found this move knight f3, which in the game I know I was quite proud of playing. And the idea is I'm defending here, and they can never really take this pawn. Just to give a sample line, we're just getting all our pieces developed too quickly. Here we have this move e5, knight d5, takes, rook b3, and if, let's say they grab another pawn, because what else are they supposed to do? Here loses the queen, then we can go queen c1, and rook a3 traps the queen. So this was just a sample line. This is not at all forced, but that's just to show you some of the dangers, and my opponent really recognized this and went for this move bishop g4. And here, as a lower rated player, it's hard to just leave this pawn on pre forever, but I just really can. If he ever takes here, I go rook b1 and then take here. So I'm not really sure why I played the move I did. It is one of the engine's favorite moves, but it sort of doesn't make sense. Here in hindsight, I'd probably play this move bishop d3. I'm just developing more pieces, and I'm actually not worried about losing this pawn because I think either bishop e3, which is also possible, or you can go a3, threatening bishop e3, or you can even go castles. And this pawn I think is much more easy to lose because I'm just going to open up all the files. So they probably shouldn't take. They should go like knight bd7, but then here again we can just go e5 or g4 or something, and the position is actually +4. So that's also reasonable. e5 is also kind of reasonable, but knight a4 is a move I think I probably wouldn't play anymore. I'm attacking the queen, and here they went queen c7, and I just went back because the knight's kind of just misplaced here. I kind of have b4, b5 ideas. So here, if they wanted, they could go queen b6, and I would have to find a different move. Who knows if I would play knight a4, knight c3. I'm not really sure what my mentality was in this game. This was around like 5-ish years ago. So instead, my opponent went knight bd7, and here I went for e5, attacking this and attacking here. I'm also sort of preventing them from playing e5, which was a very important note. Here they played here. And here I made the best move, but and I think I made it pretty quickly, but in a game nowadays, I would much more rather play this move knight e4. And it's not even a better move. The moves I think knight takes d5 according to the engine is slightly better, but knight e4 makes a lot more sense because notice here black is quite cramped and we don't really want to trade pieces. Also, we can bring their pawns to the center, that gives them outposts. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And here, for example, maybe I was worried about my center immediately crumbling, but this, I guess, okay, yeah, sorry, he can't even take here because I pretty sure I have bishop b5 check, and his position just becomes terrible. So he has to take here, and okay, here I have some crazy tactics, but this would have been sort of my more natural response without calculating any of the c5 moves. Just knight e4 just looks a little bit more natural. Even something like d takes c5. Actually, no, here this would be losing. So I would have to calculate all this. So maybe I saw the c5 move and I calculated it and I didn't think it seemed clear. But yeah, knight takes d5 I feel like is a move that I really wouldn't play nowadays, or at least I would have some doubts about playing. And here I played a move that was really just makes no sense. I played this move c3. And this, I think, is another move that a lot of lower-rated players would play because it just makes no sense. Like, what is the idea of c3? The idea of c3 was I got connect 4. That was my idea. I also thought, oh, maybe he gets knight b4 in the future. Like, the knight's never going to b4. It had to go here, 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 knight b4. It doesn't make any sense. Also thought I'd defend this. From what? Was he attacking the pawn? No. So c3 is kind of just a useless move here. Just develop. Develop, castle. That's how chess should be played. We shouldn't waste time with moves like c3, which could even be bad. I don't have bishop b4 anymore. So c3, the engine doesn't say it's a bad move, but I think practically it makes no sense. So here my opponent went e6, makes a lot of sense. And here again, I showed a skill that I think I developed. the idea that I don't have to completely get rid of a pin. Here, bishop d3, like 90% of chess players play here. But I was just like, oh, there's this annoying pin. Let me just get rid of the pin. Like, why? You can go bishop d3 here and then move your queen. There's basically no need. The bishop is just bad on e2. And here my opponent went bishop e7. And again, here I made a very just silly move. Here I went for this move h3, which is just really silly, and we'll see why. But why didn't I just castle? Like, was that not my whole idea, to castle? And for example, if they castle, now I can go h3, and we'll see why that this is different in the game. But here I went h3, and after takes, my opponent has this move bishop h4 check. Like, I just can't castle anymore. I have to go like king e2, and I just can't get my king onto the king side. And it's possible that the center could open up with takes, and then f6, and just opening up the center. This is a very dangerous position. Instead, my opponent went queen b6, which at first seems like, okay, this doesn't really make a difference, right? Because now you can go here. If you take here, he just wins this pawn. Or he can go takes, and win this pawn. So he's preventing castling a little bit. But here I went queen b3, and now we see that after this bishop h4 move, I would have king d1. And I'm no longer pinned along this diagonal, but I'm going king c2 next. And my king is perfectly safe, and I have the bishop pair. So instead I took, and now he went bishop h4. I'm not sure this makes too big a difference. Probably the idea was that there's no d-pawn hanging anymore. Here when king d1, it's really hard to find a move. Now here, my opponent definitely played, I think, the most natural move, rook c8. The idea is you're preventing king c2 because there's queen d4. And that just picks up a pawn, and then I pick up here, and it should be just game over. So instead here, I thought, okay, I don't want my king on d1, but actually, now you can realize the king can just stay on d1. Like, who's going to attack the king on these files? No one. So you can just keep the king on d1. You can sort of just trade, and then maybe go for this move b3, stopping the knight from going to these squares. Next, play king c2, king d3, and if he had a bishop here, yes, he would be terrible, but he doesn't. After something like this, let's say knight d7 here, and let's say b5 to clamp down on this. Here the position should be around like +2, +3 for white, because I have the bishop pair and my structure is way better. But instead I went bishop e1, not only giving up the bishop pair, but also unconnecting my rooks. And also, the bishop could have also come here. So this is a very terrible move. He should pretty much always take here. And after takes, he doesn't have the problem of the bishop pair anymore. And this position is probably slightly better for white. My bishop is probably pretty good here, because if I had the dark square bishop, it would be horrible. But since I have the light squared bishop, it does have some mobility, and I do have some ideas of weakening the king side. So the position is still better for me, but this is definitely his best option. After here, takes, I'm just in an endgame where I'm just better. So there's no need to fear here. And here I just should have gone b3, preventing the knight from coming to c4. King c2 here. Go bishop d2. I go transpose the other line down a tempo, but yeah, it's not like he's going to use the tempo to make some miraculous change. Instead, I go bishop e2, which is just so stupid, because my idea was just to get rid of this knight when it comes to c4. Just stupid. I'm giving up the bishop pair for this knight that was pretty bad after b3. And it's just because I wanted my pawn chain to be solid. I wanted this connect 4 because I thought I was playing connect 4, but I wasn't. So yeah, here again, I want the connect 4. So here I can just develop with a move like king c2 or rook f1 or, I don't know, bishop d2. But I'm like, I want the connect 4. Let's go bishop g3. So if he goes f4, f6, I don't have to do anything because it's defended. Yeah, there's no reason to play like this. Again, like, this is not such a big threat. f6. For example, if I play this move rook f1 and he goes f6, I can just ignore it. Something like this would be, or sorry, not takes there. Here, b3 first, so that rook can't come over, and then after rook goes back, takes here. This pawn is actually pretty nice. But at the time, I was just really, really afraid of this change in pawn structure. Not even to mention, like, here I could go bishop g3 too. I don't have to do it right away before f6, because f6 makes a lot less sense once I've played bishop g3. Instead, he went king d7. Here I developed my king. Finally, I played a very good move. And my opponent went rook fc8 and hc8. And this is a very natural move, but quite a bad one. I think he should really go b4, b5 and prevent this. Because after rook c8, he gives me enough time to play a4. Now b5 is coming with a lot less potency. And now here after this move a6, which he might want to play, my opponent probably, I didn't talk to my opponent after the game, and this was so long ago that even if I did, I would have forgot, was afraid of this move a5. But this is actually fine because my opponent can now switch his ideas over here, and these pawns are being put on dark squares, which are going to probably be weak when this bishop comes, when we get a bishop endgame. So this was also probably considerable by my opponent just to go a6 right away, but they went b6. Their idea is a6, b5. I went go king d3. Developing my king, also preparing to bring the bishop back. a6, here I went rook hc1. And the idea is I'm just defending here, and I also want to keep the rook open possibly here. Now, both of these rooks are fine. The idea was this rook would go on f1 to pressure this. And the idea here is that the a file might open. Now here they go b5, which is very bad because it sort of justifies keeping my rook here. They should probably just wait, do nothing, and this position should just be a draw. But instead they went b5, I took, and went rook a7. And now here, maybe just b3, and after rook c7, just keep calm, keep playing developing moves, go rook a5, go here, go bishop d2, and I control the only open file on the board, so the position should just be nice for me. But instead I rushed a little bit. Now this is all still fine, I'm still better, but he sort of gets a lot more counterplay after this move. b4, bishop e1, and yes, I have the only open file, and yes, some of his pawns are backwards, and yes, my rook is better than his, but all my pawns are on dark squares, and we have the same amount of material. He also has this hole here. It's probably about equal. Here my opponent played f5, which is just really weird. Doesn't really make too much sense. He doesn't really need to do anything here. He can just go rook c6. I can never approach with my king because, okay, how would I approach with my king? And for example, if I ever trade rooks, this is just terrible for me because now I have the only weaknesses in the position, and I can't target any of his weaknesses because they're all on light squares. So I absolutely cannot trade rooks. So he just had to go rook c6 here and just do nothing. But I think my opponent also maybe wanted to win. They thought they were better here. Here my opponent went rook c8. Here I sort of offer a draw. If they were going to go here, I was just going to do this. I know I can't trade rooks because then I'm just in the worst endgame. Even though it's still a draw, I can just place the king on b3 and just do nothing for the entire time. It's sort of, I'm on the worst side of a draw if I trade rooks. So my opponent just went king e8, not trying to trade rooks, or not trying to repeat. I went rook a6 attacking here. They went king f7. Again, they can just repeat and go for the draw, and I don't think I have anything better. But instead, I went rook a7, and here we see my opponent goes h6. And yeah, my opponent was the rating favorite in this game, but sometimes I think against lower rated players, you gotta just take the draw and not try to push too hard, because when you push too hard, you probably will lose. And that has happened to me before. Here I went for g4, and this is, again, there's really just no need. What you should do here as white, just do nothing. Let him create his weaknesses if he wants to. I just don't need to do anything. He can't make any improving moves. Like, I could even go bishop c1, turning bishop a3, and oh, suddenly he could just lose the game like this. And then I go c4, takes, and he would lose. Something like this. Takes, d5, takes, and here takes, and I would win because this is just a winning pawn in game. I can go king e5, and there's no way to defend all his material here. So yeah, that would be a way that you can win here as white. Just do nothing. But instead I was too frustrated probably to do nothing. And as a lower rated player and a younger player, I just wanted to do something. It's hard to just do nothing. But yeah, doing nothing was probably the best course of action there. So here it takes. And here I've kind of only given myself losing chances now. He could create a pass pawn here. And if he trades these pieces off, then that could be very dangerous, especially because my pass pawn isn't going anywhere. Or my extra pawn isn't going anywhere. So instead he went g6, which just doesn't really make a lot of sense. His idea is to go h5 right away, but again here, it's a little bit too much. He's creating too much weaknesses. g6, here I went bishop d2. And I'm just looking at the pawn, and I'm asking you, what are you going to do with the pawn? If you go g5, you've created a weakness. And this is unfortunately what he should do, and here I would have gone bishop c1, turning here. He should get off of that, and okay, we can go to this endgame, where I'm just clearly much better, and your pawns are backwards here just as well as mine. But instead he went h5, which loses the game on the spot to takes, and bishop g5. Here he went rook e8. I go king f4, bringing my king into the game. Here he went king f8. Here it's important not to be tempted by this, because while it might be winning, it's very, very, very difficult to say. So here, for example, he could adopt a fortress like this, and the engine actually is giving drawn here, but it probably is like a difficult draw for black to get. Here, okay, king g6 would be bad. He has to go here such that he can meet c4 with king c6. So this is, again, still very difficult to actually see, because I think a lot of players would chase up this way and then just realize, oh wait, I'm just dead lost after this, and king d6. So yeah, still I must be careful not to exchange all the pieces even though I'm winning a pawn. Instead I played the best move, king f4. My opponent goes bishop d8. I take, and here I made a very bad move, which is really move I can't understand anymore, because my rook is doing a really nice job here of patrolling the whole 7th rank, so why didn't I just bring my king in? Now, I was worried probably about him attacking my pawn, but here I can go king f6, he can't take because mate. Let's say he goes for a move like king g7, I can go check here and then go rook here. Or sorry, check there, I would go rook h7 and pick up the pawn. Or if he goes king h8, then I could go rook here. And there's just nothing he can do. If he goes here, I can start picking up these pawns. And if he defends this, I can go here and pick this up with check. Here, takes, and he takes here, here. But instead I went rook h7, you will see why this is bad, because after takes here, rook takes h5, I'm just no longer even winning. Because he can sort of get this fortress after rook c6 and rook c6. Rook c8 and rook c6. After rook h3, rook c6, and there's just no way to break through here as white. But instead he went king g7, I went rook g5. We're going to skip over these moves a little bit because they're not really too important. All that matters is that in this position, rook c6 again creates the fortress. There's no way I can approach my king here. There's no way I can push this pawn. So there's nothing to do, and it's just a draw. But instead my opponent goes rook e8. Now this is just a very passive defense because he's not attacking here. Actually, in rook c8, there's a lot of cases where I can bring my king over here, but he can always take, and then bring his king here. For example, king b3. Let's say he just... Okay, actually it's kind of difficult to wait. Yeah, it's sort of difficult to wait, actually. I guess you can just wait between these two moves if I try to approach. But instead, rook e8 is too passive, king c2. Now I'm able to walk over. Actually, here I missed the easy winning plan. Just go here, takes, and then walk the king in. This is just pretty easy. But I went king c2, and after rook e7 here, apparently the position is, again, I can't approach, but here, this move, rook c6, again, would draw. After king b5, takes, rook takes e6, he can win this pawn. And yeah, there's no way to defend the pawn. And then this should just be a draw. Even if he sort of does this, he's getting opposition. And that's an important way to get a draw. Instead, I took on e6. He plays rook b3. I take here. He takes here. And actually, after rook d6, I had on my score sheet that I lost this game as white. Which... I just really can't believe I could lose this game from here. I just wrote 0-1 on my score sheet. I assume it was wrong. I assume it was 1-0 because my opponent also, I know my opponent, they resign a lot. They resign way too early. I mean, this is way too early. Even now, if I'm against a GM, I'm not resigning in this position because there has been many cases where 2 pawns versus a king, 2 pawns and a rook versus a rook and king has been drawn. It is not the easiest win in the world, especially with the pawns on the side. Then it's not easy whatsoever, but like this, it's much easier. But again, this is like, it's not as simple as just like you win the game easily. Like here, for example, he's already getting a lot of play. Like I'm still winning, but okay, how do I approach? I have to go rook c4, and then he can go like here, and then like if I push d5, I even lose this pawn. I'm still winning, but it's like I have to find only moves like rook c2, c4 to put this behind the pawn. Like it's not easy. But again, my opponent resigned here, and I think that ended a pretty instructive game. A lot of instructive ideas, like don't be afraid of pins, like don't play useless moves just because they look nice, and also don't give up the bishop pair for no reason. Like these are mistakes that I made at 1700 that like now I just look back and I'm like, oh, obviously, like that's like I would never do that. But if you showed me that kind of stuff when I was 1700, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd never do that, yet I would do it in my own games. So yeah, we're all still like, everyone is just improving at chess, and there's still a lot of things to be learned, and a lot of things to improve at chess is actually just to actually apply the things you know in your games. Because I know you will know, don't give up the bishop pair, but you'll be like, oh, that knight has c4, it's so annoying, I'm just gonna give it up, I just don't want to deal with that knight. Like, don't think like that. Play the best move, and don't just play moves because they look good. Actually calculate and actually realize, is this move actually necessary? And then finally, like, just always play in games. Like, even if it's completely equal, dead, doesn't matter, you can still find ways to win. Under 2200, there will be people who beat you in king and pawn endgames where you have the same amount of material and everything is probably symmetrical. There are still ways to win. There are still many things that you can do. So yeah, that's the end of today's video, guys. If you like this video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.